Hey friend, welcome back to Hey Wait. There are a lot of people who are angry right now. And there are a lot of really good reasons to be angry right now. And what you do or don't do with your anger matters when it comes to how you relate to yourself, to the people around you, and to the world. My guest today is Dr. Mitch Abrams. He's spent decades studying the intersection of anger with trauma, performance, and emotional control. He's a sport, clinical, and forensic psychologist, and he's worked everywhere from locker rooms to prison yards. Since 2000, he's been inside the New Jersey prison system and now oversees psychological services for 7 of the state's prisons as chief psychologist for Rutgers University Correctional Health Care. He's also a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Rutgers Health Robert Wood Johnson Medical School and the founder of Learned Excellence for Athletes, where he helps athletes, coaches, and professionals use anger management training to reach peak performance. The title of his new book kind of says it all. I'm not effing angry. Adjust the flames to get what you want and need. It's raw, it's practical, and it's about normalizing your anger so you can harness it instead of letting it blow up your relationships, your work, or your self-worth. I asked Dr. Mitch to come on because I think he has a lot of interesting things to say about how anger and anxiety are nearly the same physiologically, and why anger can be an antidote to trauma. That said, he and I work with different populations. And we work with different populations because we have very different backgrounds. He's a guy from Brooklyn who had to learn to deal with his explosive anger, and I'm a lady from suburban Virginia who learned to go along to get along and rarely expressed my anger. That said, there are things he says that I don't have any experience of, or that I even don't agree with, and I tell him that in the interview. And I'm sharing this with you because, in addition to talking about how anger is something to understand, to work with, and to use, I think what we're ultimately talking about in this conversation is how not to let discomfort disconnect you from other people, whether the discomfort is anger, shame, disagreement, or any other flavor that it can come in. And just a heads up, in case you have young or impressionable ears around, there are more cuss words in this week's episode than normal, so do what you want with that. That said, whether you're someone who loses it sometimes, or lives or works with someone who loses it, or you're someone who couldn't imagine ever expressing your anger, I think this conversation is going to make you think differently about what anger really is and what it can do for you. So let's get into it. Here's Dr. Mitch Abrams. Hello, Mitch. Good to have you here.
Hi, Jay. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we were just chit-chatting a little bit beforehand, and not to recreate that conversation, but it was really good. So I'm going to start with, I don't know, the elephant in the room or the F-bomb in the room, which is your book, the title of it.
Yes.
I'm not fucking angry. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that the U has been covered up from the smoke coming out of this angry guy's head. So that's a potentially controversial title for people. Why did you pick that?
I first want to thank you for acknowledging the sophistication that we used by hiding the U so that we would have a little less censorship. It's interesting because I get a lot of people refer to me for all kinds of problems, and anger is certainly one of them. It's an area of expertise of mine. And it would be so much easier if someone came in and said, well, you know, Doc, I know that I'm snapping at my kids more than I want. I'm not getting where I want to go in life. I'm performing at a lower level. But that's not what happens. In fact, when I get those referrals, the work is short. It's usually like a month or two because it's a matter of filling their toolbox and they're already well on their way, especially with athletes. They come in with a lot of skills they don't even realize they have. But the biggest problem is that when you ask them, why are you so upset? Most people's response is, I'm not fucking angry. And they're yelling it at you. And they have all of the nonverbals, the bulging veins coming out of anywhere. And you're like, of course you're not, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that what that represents is shame. I don't think there's any emotion that carries more shame with it, except maybe shame itself, than anger. And it's the biggest problem in managing this. Actually, I have an idea where it happened. Some of this, I think, is a negative side effect of the positive psychology movement, where the good part of that movement, of course, was appreciating that everybody has strengths, and the more that we can fan those flames and maximize the strengths, they become more effective people. But there was also this conversation of good versus bad emotions. And I don't think there is such a thing.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So the thing is, What I've come to appreciate is it's not what, it's why and how, and even more important is how much. Because what we find is that in many walks of life, at moderate levels of arousal, including with anger, it helps performance. And it's not until we get over that cliff, the Yerkes-Dodson law, where all of our cognitive processes go in the toilet, right? Fine motor coordination, decision-making, problem-solving, our ability to synthesize the data around us all go into the shitter. When that happens,
once you
when you
get to a
get
certain
very,
level of
very high,
anger.
you peel all the onion and people started to come up with like, I never realized how many different words there were for emotions until the internet, right? It's like, tell me all the different ways, all the words that describe anger. And it's like a list of words that I never even heard of, right? But the thing that's really curious to me, what really captured it for me is we are not getting in trouble for being angry. Anger is normal. What we're really trying to prevent, if we're going to talk about anger on a dimensional, is we're trying to avoid rage. Right?
What we do when our anger is out of control. Anger itself, in and of itself, is not bad or destructive. It's
Not only is
where
it
it
not
can
bad, it's
go if it's
good.
explosive. Yeah.
It can be productive. I mean, you could be pissed at me right now, but I don't know because there's no behavioral analog. And so, I often set people up if I'm doing a presentation in, a high school or something. I'll say, by a show of hands, how many of you remember the last time you got in trouble for being angry? And everybody raised their hands. And it's a setup. It's like, it's bullshit. None of you have gotten in trouble for being angry. You've gotten in trouble for some of the things that you've done when you're angry. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
That's a really good distinction. It's like saying to your kid, what you did was bad. You're not bad.
Exactly right. I mean, I couldn't agree with you anymore. It is one of the hardest things about parenting. We're trying to correct behaviors. And even personality traits, we're trying to shape them, but we're not trying to throw them out with the baby out with the bathwater. It's not a character assassination. It's a correction of behavior. And that's very different.
Very different. I want to go back, though, to the part of the title of the book and what you're saying. People come into your office and they're like, I'm not fucking angry. And you said it's linked to shame. Do you think it's linked to not knowing how they feel in general?
Yes,
Like
but
not
not
being
for
able to
everyone.
name. Okay.
I think, Jay, it's certainly a reasonable, there's enough people saying this that to say that emotional labeling or not being able to appropriately label your emotions is an epidemic, right? We get these phones out and we're like, oh, well, we'll just use emojis, little pictures. I don't know anybody that can say honestly that they have not had more fights with people since texting came along than before.
Oh, for sure.
Right. I had a professional, Jackie, who Jackie is, doesn't matter. I mean, she's wonderful, but she and I would fight like cats and dogs, and I'd be like, just pick up the fucking phone and tell me what you want me to know, right? Because I'm reading her text, not understanding half of the emojis, and she's being sarcastic and playful, and I'm thinking she's being a bitch. It's like, what's going on here, right? So I think that we are so poor at not only identifying how we feel, but identifying how other people feel. So how are you going to manage anger if you can't even identify it? And what's interesting is if I said to you, Jay, tell me if you saw a dog, what would the signs be that you'd look for that dog is about to attack? You'd have nonverbals in your mind, right? Ears either up or back, brushed,
Right.
growl, the teeth are out. But the point is that it almost as if it's easier for us to predict how non-humans will act and how they feel than how we do humans. And I think that what we're talking about here is so critical, but it's not rocket science. I mean, I think that if people get through my book and don't go, I knew probably 90% of what this guy said. I just wasn't allowed to own it. I wasn't able to practically do something about it. And I think that as a society, we've crippled ourselves.
Well, it's interesting when, I thought about having you on here. Your work is so fascinating to me. And, you've done a lot of work in prisons and with athletes, and I find all of it really fascinating. And it is pretty much the exact opposite of the work I do. So most of my clients are women. Most of my clients' stress response in interrelational situations or any situations is to fawn or to flee or to freeze. It's not to fight. And in fact, I had someone reach out to me, a listener reach out to me and ask me to do an episode on anger because she's in her 60s and she said, I've never learned how to express it.
Right.
And so I have so many clients who would never express anger. And you work on the other end of the spectrum with people who have challenges not being explosive in their anger. So I am curious to know, do you ever work with people who are on the end of the spectrum where they're like, I suppress it?
No, absolutely, because it's mostly trauma survivors, right? And
Oh.
so and it's interesting because there's this overarching pressure that I think people have on how they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to feel. And certainly if you have a trauma history, an abuse history, that's often been the grooming that the oppressor has done as well. Keep this quiet. This is between us. Don't tell anybody, right? And you don't realize how bad what was going on was until you get a little bit older and a little bit perspective. One of the things that I often say to people that are survivors, I say to victims, I differentiate victims versus survivors based off of where they are in their recovery.
And you're healing from it.
Yeah. So the more healed they are, they're survivors. They're victims when they're really symptomatic. And one of the tools that I use, because almost all of the trauma symptomology that you pull for DSM, it's all anxiety. It's all anxiety. And so the interesting thing, though, is that anger and fear are almost identical physiologically. The difference is which direction you're going with it. And so the treatments that are used specifically for the re-experiencing symptoms of trauma, the nightmares, the flashbacks, EMDR has become like, do you ever see the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
Yeah.
EMDR has become Windex, or as Chris Rock would say, Tussin, right? When something is used for everything, there's a big placebo effect that goes into that whole psychology of it. But one thing that we do know for sure that EMDR has and prolonged exposure has, that if people can get through the narrative, 8 to 12 sessions, you see a significant decrease when they get through the narrative. And so what I would say to people is, as long as you're symptomatic, the person who's done this to you continues to have power over your life. Aren't you fucking tired of that? I mean, to go through the work, there's no doubt it's going to get worse before it gets better. I understand the hesitance. You can't push someone to do it before they're ready. If you can't outrun your demons, and we can't, but when you turn to face them, they're usually not as big as you think they are. And one of the cool things about anger, let me just offer this. One of the cool things about anger, it's interesting that we have shame about anger, because the other piece of anger that people don't want to talk about is it feels really good when we're angry. It feels so good, it's scary. It's exactly right. So anger is an emotion of power and attack. And it's almost like we're not supposed to feel that way. It's one of the reasons why everyone loves sports, because it's one of the places that you can feel powerful and dominant and not act like well, some people do, but not be shamed for it. And so I think that if we're not considering the value of anger in the treatment of trauma, then we're missing the boat, because it's there. The only question is where. And can we mobilize it?
I want to go back to something you said that was really interesting. Make sure the listener got it. You said that anger and anxiety physiologically are fairly similar.
Almost identical. In fact, the only way you could tell the difference is with like galvanic skin response, which is equipment we generally don't walk around with. But a lot of the things that happen, including your somatic work, right? It's all about engaging the parasympathetic nervous system and stopping this spiked reaction. Well, muscle tension, breathing rate, heart rate, sweating. Women don't sweat. Perspiring, urge to urinate. All of these things happen.
Look at me pitting out right now. I totally sweat.
But all of this is our body preparing for survival. And whether we're going to attack or we're going to run away or we're going to fawn, our body responds the same way. So a lot of the skills that I teach in anger management are nearly identical to the skills that are used in anxiety management. The difference is the cognitive piece and the behavioral piece that goes along with it.
Could you give an example of how you might work with someone who they're the fighter, they're coming in and they're having a challenge being explosive, versus someone coming in with physiologically the same thing going on, but they're like, well, I'll give you an example. I had a client yesterday who was telling me about how she's being taken advantage of at work. And the words she was saying made it sound like she was angry. She was crying like a little kid who was sad and hurt. And I said to her, I actually don't think those tears are how you feel. I think you're angry. And she was like, oh, I'm sure it's in there somewhere, but I won't ever let myself see it. Right. So,
Right. But then the question is, why not? And I think that for people that suppress, they're afraid that if they let it out, it will be so explosive, it'll be destructive to everyone. And yeah, there is that possibility. I mean, but I think that's also what happens for most people on a daily basis anyway. In the book, I talk about this explosion threshold and the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? So, you wake up and say your mood is kind of at baseline, and then you go, oh crap, I just realized I missed my alarm. And you go up a little bit. Now, the best thing you could do is go, all right, things happen, no big deal. Do a body check and maybe use some breathing exercises or something to bring yourself back down to neutral, right? But we don't do that because we're too busy. That's the way life goes, right? And then your wife nags you and it goes up here, or your husband, whomever. Again, another opportunity to get down. And you spill coffee on yourself. Then someone cuts you off when you're driving. And then your body keeps track of all this stuff. And you're not getting
right.
back down to
I mean,
baseline.
I can feel it in my nervous system as you're adding those things together.
Exactly.
I can feel it in my own body going like, oh, I'm a ticking time bomb.
Well, and very often I'll be sitting right at this desk with my shoulders up by my ears because my traps are where my stress sits. Right? And so I learn PMR and I can roll my shoulders back and everything takes the edge off. But what often happens...
What's PMR?
Progressive muscle relaxation.
Okay.
So it's a way that you go from body part to body part. If you hold a muscle contraction longer, the relaxation will be more intense. And so...
intentionally gripping to let it go.
Exactly right. And so what happens is that when people practice and they become more proficient, and it takes some time because it takes some time, you're not paying attention. People don't always pay attention to where their stress sits. Right? I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've had 25 years of my traps being exhausted, right? But when you're teaching people these skills, because it's all or none, if one goes on, they all go on. If one goes down, they all go down. So it's cascading effect. It's one of the reasons why body work and acupuncture and all of the rest of these things often work, because if you could start the process that goes down, you can help, gravity will help you. But the thing is that we don't use skills to get ourselves back down to baseline. And it's building, it's building, it's building. And invariable, look, if you don't believe in God, at least believe in Murphy's Law. I promise you, when you are in a bad mood and you have accumulated stress, the thing that sets you off is going to be such a small, stupid thing that everyone is going to be sure that you're out of your goddamn mind. And you're often responding like, oh my God. If anybody would have seen all of the bullshit I've dealt with today, that it got to this point, but the answer is, yeah, okay. But Mitch, what did you do to get back down to baseline? Well, because we think that we can handle it. Sometimes we can't. And then we blow up. And the thing is that once you get over that explosion threshold, there's not a lot that you can do. It's medication, physical restraint, or letting it run its course. It's all about avoiding getting there. And so I would say for the people that suppress their emotions, they have an understandable fear that if they let it out, it's going to be a tsunami. And I would say, okay, that might be true, but we can bleed the pressure valve, right? It doesn't have to be an explosion. And for that matter, when I'm working with people, especially high performers, I don't want them doing downward dog at the free throw line. I just want them to turn it down a little bit so that, remember I was talking about that curve. I don't want to be over the curve. I want to be back this way. High achievers go up to that red line without going over it. Because when it goes over it, your cognitive processes go, and you're less likely to make good decisions.
This is about being able to track yourself. And I mean, this is the whole thing behind Hey Wait, right? When I teach people to use Hey Wait as a practice, that's saying, hey, wait, I notice I'm not having a good experience of myself in my body. I need to take a moment to do a practice to get back to myself, to figure out what I need to do to shift that. The reason why it's the same as, what you're teaching is that this is old, ancient wisdom. People talk about it in all different kinds of ways, which is like widening the gap between the stimulus and the response. This is what is going to make us a better human as opposed to an animal, because we are wired like animals and we have to train to be able to have responses rather than react. So what I hear you saying and what you're talking about, this threshold, is like, if you were tracking yourself through your day, you would notice earlier on, oh, I just ramped up. I just got a little buzzy inside my system because of that missed alarm. I need to shake or do a breathing technique or just acknowledge of of course I feel anxious about this or whatever, so that it keeps below the explosive line.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's not rocket science, but it's self-awareness that most people don't have the courage to do. That's why I'm not fucking angry. When everyone else, you're usually the last person to know, right? I mean, very often when people are referring people here, it's not because they hate them. It's because they don't like the way they're being treated by them. And when people are sent here, they see it as punishment instead of an opportunity. When I say high achievers, I don't necessarily mean high earners. I mean highly effective people, okay? They're always trying to understand what grit is, what power is, what influence is. And to me, the most powerful people are the ones that are unprovocable. If I can provoke you, I can control you. How can you possibly prevent the reaction if you don't have self-awareness? If you don't know what your triggers are? And I'm not talking about the triggers that everyone has, right? Someone cuts you off, you're going to probably be upset about it on some degree of variability. Someone punches you, it's kind of obvious. But I'm talking about the things that we react to that make no sense at all to anyone else. Like they watch you and you go, why'd you react to that? And the reason why you react to it is because that's pushing a button that's at the heart of your insecurities. Like if someone says to you, and I use this as an example, someone says, well, I think you're a fucking idiot. You don't respond to that unless you're afraid it might be true. And the analogy that I give back to them is, and actually, I'll tell you a funny story of how this went left. But I said, there'll be a woman sitting here with a blue sweater on, and I'll say, that's the ugliest red sweater I've ever seen in my life. And she looks at me confused. I was like, why are you confused? She goes, well, because it's blue. I was like, right. It's blue, and you like it, and my opinion doesn't matter so much. So why do people have to respond to someone saying it's an ugly red sweater? And it has to do with their insecurities. Now, the funny part of that story is I tried that with a guy who was colorblind, and the whole thing went left. Because he didn't understand what I was trying to do.
The distinction, right?
Right. But the analogy is very powerful. We don't have to respond to things that we know are not true. It's almost like people as a whole are keeping score. And if someone says something about you that's not true, you have to prove them wrong. No, I am a person of good character. That stuff is measured over time. You don't have to be so defensive. Relax.
This is me taking what you're saying through the lens of what I deal with every day. My clients, and I actually have an exercise that I do with them where I'll kind of play with them around, oh, I love those earrings you're wearing, and they're not wearing any earrings. And they, I say, what would you do if we were like sitting at a restaurant and I said that to you? And they said they'd be like, oh, well, thanks, because they don't have the sense of self to say, oh, I'm not wearing earrings. It's kind of the same thing, but your clients are the more that likely ones to be like, F you, I'm not wearing, F you for saying my shirt's stupid. Whereas mine are like, oh, thank you,
Yes, but I think that both sides of that continuum exist in the same person often.
I agree.
I think the two conditions that are the hardest for humans to deal with, presuming they're neurotypical, right? I mean, take autism spectrum folks and schizophrenia out of the equation. For the average person that has reasonable social skills and needs, the two hardest conditions to deal with are loneliness and feeling misunderstood. And I think everybody struggles with that. And so a lot of people, especially men, their anger is a way to try to control their environment and to stave off the fear that they're not good enough or that I have to right the wrongs. And it's interesting because real confidence is not when you bang your chest. Real confidence is quiet confidence. And in fact, if you take a look at, I've done dating violence prevention workshops with adolescent males, which is always a lot of fun because of how unaware they are of so many things. But you always ask,
sure.
Which guy in here is the most successful socially with the girls? And they always point to the same type of person. Not the best looking, decent looking, but has an easiness, an agreeableness, a calmness. I don't have to prove myself to everyone type of thing. Versus most of the other kids that are banging their chest, I'm so manly, and the girls laugh at it. Right. And the bravado is to cover the insecurities. And so that's why the antidote to the title of the book, I'm Not Fucking Angry, is Yeah, you are. And it's okay. We all are. And in fact, when people start telling me the things that they get angry about, it is almost never that I go, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Almost always it's, wow, if I was in that situation, I'd
I'd
probably
be
feel the
angry
same way.
too.
You
Yeah.
know? The thing is that I don't have a problem with you being angry. I have a problem with you doing things to hurt your relationships. And so, yeah, you're not crazy. You're not an animal. You're not out of control. I understand. You have good reasons to be angry. The question is, how angry do you want to be, and for how long?
Hey, wait, I want to take a quick break to tell you about something I genuinely love and think you might too. And yes, this is an ad, but I promise to only ever share products I actually use made by people I trust. So let me tell you about Saint Solaire. This is the sunscreen I use on my face every single day, and not just because I should, but because I actually want to. It's lightweight, not greasy, and it makes my skin feel moisturized. And I happen to use the tinted version, which doubles as a lightweight foundation, but there's a non-tinted one too. And this sunscreen checks all the boxes. It's organic, non GMO, cruelty free, reef safe, made with clean anti inflammatory ingredients that are proven not to mess with your hormones. And instead of causing breakouts, it actually heals them. And the bonus? I know the woman who created this, and she is an absolute gem of a human and the kind of person that you would be happy to support. So if you're like me and you want to protect your skin year round without putting on greasy gunk that's toxic and disrupts your endocrine system, check out saintsolareskincare.com and use Hey Wait for 15% off. And I'll drop that link in the show notes so it's easy for you to find. All right, back to the show. One of the things you say in your book that I found really fascinating and true is the paradox of anger being an antidote to trauma.
Like I was just saying, that everything in the treatment of trauma is about empowerment. Anger is an empowering emotion. Anxiety is not. And the thing is that a fear reaction, I mean, there's no shame that has to go along with it. That's just learning, right? If I go into a lion's den and I get beaten up by lions, it probably makes sense to not go into lions' dens in the future, right? A lot of what happens in trauma is just simple operant conditioning. We learn the hard way. That's dangerous. The problem is what we do with trauma is we often get a cognitive distortion that goes along with it, which is bad things happen to me, so therefore bad things are going to happen to me. And that's not necessarily true. And so the problem with anxiety is you will avoid the stimulus and you will feel better for avoiding the stimulus. And then you reinforce the avoidance. And now you find yourself further and further and further away from living your life the way you want to. Just as anger doesn't have to be rageful and out of control, I think anger can be intentional, harnessed, and directed. And that includes for people that have trauma histories. Take your life back. Be fed up. Use your anger to get through the difficult times. Over the course of my career, I have not just career, before I was a professional in life, I don't think there's anything more powerful as a motivating factor as to someone tell you you can't. I mean, we want to talk about profanity. The most powerful motivator is fuck you, watch me. Someone says you can't do it. Oh man, are you kidding me? And it's that aggressiveness. Now, it's instrumental aggression. It's goal directed because we have to be careful. Aggressiveness can involve hurting others, but it doesn't have to be. Successful people know that you need to have drive. You have to attack what the issue is. But the attack is not to hurt someone. It's I will not be denied. I have a nuclear reactor in my belly, and I will have we want to talk about renewable energy. I mean, let someone say you can't, and you're going to keep on working. You're going to work out when other people aren't looking. You're going to find the stamina. Now, of course, everything's in moderation, because if you're not careful, then you burn the candle at both ends,
Right.
so you don't get sleep, and then the whole thing collapses like a house of cards. But I think that I certainly have used anger over the course of my life to motivate me to do things, and I don't know anybody that if they're honest with themselves, hasn't as well. It's simply a matter of giving yourself permission. So if you give yourself permission to do it, then you can have a more intimate relationship with your anger. Now it's not just self-awareness. It's now I'm befriending it. I'm using it. I can summon it when I want to. And the more familiar, it's no different than I don't know much about fencing, but I'm pretty sure if I picked up a sword and I tried to do something with it, I'd be a clumsy fool. But the more I practiced, the more proficient I would get. And I see it the same way. Anger can be dangerous if you don't know how to wield it. But if you learn how to wield it, it can be a very powerful ally. And that's what I'm hoping people come away with.
This is a time when there's a lot of people who are angry about a lot of things. And like you said, whether it's the big things or whether it's the things that no one would ever guess, that's what set you off. I was going to say, like, inhabit our bodies with anger in it, right? Because there is a certain visceral experience of being angry that I know that I've worked with in my own body, that I've often talked about it as having, like, imagining that you're normally a 60-watt bulb. And when you get angry, you feel like you're a 100-watt bulb and you're going to blow all your circuits. And that there's some aspect of learning to train your body to be able to have more wattage without it changing the behavior that comes out of you.
That's a beautiful metaphor, because what I would bet is that most people that continue that metaphor, most people think if they touched a 100-watt bulb, they're going to burn themselves. But it's actually a 150-watt bulb that will burn you. Just like most things in life, I want people to become comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, it also depends on where they come from, right? There are some people that are like literally seething and spilling all over the place. Those people, you want to put a blanket over them and just say, all right, you need to take a nap, right? And then there's other people that are meek, that are so unassuming. Just talking to a golfer the other day, I was like, listen, you can afford to get pissed. You can get a little bit cocky. I mean, your parents raised you so well. I mean, you couldn't spell cocky if I gave you all the letters, right? This is the walking embodiment of humility. You can afford to hit the gas.
Well, it's funny because I have to tell you, I've read your book, and there's nothing in it that I disagree with. But sitting here talking with you, I can feel in my own body where I'm like, I don't know that I need to harness my anger. And when you said, I don't know of anyone who's ever said, oh, watch me, and use that to fuel them, I was pausing and thinking in my head, like, have I done that? And I would say I absolutely have. But I usually change the channel pretty fast to something else that's fueling me. I change the channel to some positive outcome that I want, rather than, I don't know that's wrong or bad or good. I'm just noticing the difference in, I want to tell myself the story that it's conditioning, right? That my conditioning as a person with developmental trauma was like, just be good, be the nice girl, and nothing's going to happen to you.
Right.
Not so much that if I get angry, it's never going to stop. It's more that it's like, if I get angry, it's just going to get worse. Like the treatment, people are I'm going to be more alone. Like what you were saying, that the fear is aloneness or not being accepted.
The issue isn't that everybody has to be angry. The issue is people should be honest and allow themselves to be angry. Mm-hmm. And certainly it's not true that the only way to motivate yourself is with anger. What I'm saying is anger is not...
It's a powerful way to do that.
That's right. It's not evil. It is not a problem. Anger by itself it can be a good thing. And we've demonized it. I mean, look, I think that one of the things that I've learned over the years is that I can tolerate that 100-watt bulb better than a lot of other people. For lots of different reasons. I've been around a lot of, I guess, scary and dangerous places and such. And so I stay cool a little bit longer. It doesn't that I don't get angry. I just think I can tolerate it. So I think I have a little bit further on the curve before my brain starts shutting. Now, everyone has that cliff. I have the cliff too. I just think that I have a higher tolerance for it, some combination of, genetics, temperament, and experience, etc. My point is not, everyone get angry and use it for everything. It's more, the people that told you that anger is bad are full of shit. And in fact, the people that told you that anger is bad are usually pretty angry people that are trying to control you. To me, it's part of the wonderful palette of emotions that we have that should not. And I hear Al Ellis in the background with the rational emotive therapy yelling at me about shoulds, right? I am very cautious about shoulds, but I am going to use a should here. We should not deny ourselves the human experience of anger, but we should be mindful of it, intentional of it. I think most people don't know how to manage their anger at all because it's been demonized. An analogy that I use often, and it's the reason why the subtitle talks about adjusting the flame. There are a few things that make me happier than a good steak. Love steak. So if you're a vegetarian, you'll get it, but it might not have the same visceral response for you. The key to a good steak is not just cooking it with heat, it's high heat. You do it right, you have an encrusted outside. I prefer my steaks rare, not everyone does. But the point is, it's not just heat, it's high heat. If you know how to use that flame, you could do amazing things. But what happens if you can't control the flame? You don't wind up with a steak. You wind up with a piece of leather, a baseball glove. And so anger is just like that flame. If you know how to harness it and you know how to adjust it, you can do beautiful things with it. But if you can't, you're going to hurt yourself and other people around. It's similar to most tools, a knife, a gun, things that can be dangerous. They also can be used responsibly and safely. So anger is one of many different things in our life that if it's wielded by the amateur who has not had any practice in it, it can be dangerous. And I would even say the other side of it is that there are some people that temperamentally this doesn't apply to that much. But there are also people that are over-controlled and suppress their emotions so much, including their anger, that when they do explode, it's so disproportionate. And if they would just allow themselves to be human and learn to master it a little bit, they'd find that life is a little bit smoother in between explosions.
I definitely agree with what you said in the sense of that we're lying to ourselves about how we feel, especially when it comes to anger, that's one that we, like you said, have shame about. And so it gets stuffed or it comes out sideways or it comes out. My mentor always used to say, dropping bombs on Luxembourg. It's like those of us who are people pleasers and will just, be so nice and so nice and so nice and so nice. And then all of a sudden, what the fuck just happened? Like you just said something that was so mean because it's been building in you. I'm one of those people. Like, I don't get angry very often, but when I do, I know for sure it comes out of nowhere for the person.
Well, that's probably fun to watch, but not
to be on the other side of it.
Exactly right. And I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, people overall, I mean, it sounds so anticlimactic, but we're human. We're doing the best we can. I don't know people. I mean, look, I've been working in prison for 25 years, and I've come across some legitimately evil, psychopathic people that would use you for whatever they could. They are the rare exception. Even inside prisons, about 60 to 80%, depending on how you use the symptoms, 60 to 80% of people that are in prison would meet criteria for antisocial personality disorder because it's a behavioral disorder, right? So you check off a certain boxes as soon as you walk into the prison, right? But even of that 60 to 80%, only about 5, maybe 10% of those people have strong psychopathic features. Most people are decent people that are doing the best they can and have lost track of their ability. Either they never learned it, they lived in an environment that justifies violence as a way to manage things. It's one of the things that the hostility bias talks about. A matter of circumstances, for sure. And a lot of people I know, the wrong reaction and the wrong situation easily could have had me behind bars. Of when someone has difficulty with anger, they're hurting everyone around. There's nowhere to hide. You can't miss it. Whereas other emotions, when you struggle with it, it tends to be more of an internal self-destructive pattern.
If there was a person listening who lives with someone who has a lot of anger, they don't necessarily, like they're on the end of the spectrum where they suppress their anger, but they live with someone who can have a lot of anger. The message I hear you saying, which I agree with you, is anger is healthy. It is a healthy emotion. It's not a bad emotion. What about the people who are on the receiving end of someone who doesn't know how to manage it?
I think it depends on whether or not it's manifested as domestic violence. Because when there's domestic violence, there's often coercive control going on. And when that's happening, it's really not a relationship. It's about dominance. And so it's hard to give people advice on how to interact with someone who's not interested in having an interaction. They're more interested in having a dom. Now, the truth, though, is that most domestic violence is low level and bidirectional. It's not what people see on TV. Most of it is people going back and forth at one another, and it's often very violent to listen to. And then in fact, a lot of perpetrators of domestic violence that I've worked with that are men have said, I just wish she would have hit me. It would have hurt a lot less than the things that she was saying. Because if a woman outranks the man in social intelligence, then she's got an acid tongue and she knows what to say. So there's lessons to be learned in both directions. But so long as we're not talking about the extremes, I think it all starts with validation, right? It's not about an ultimatum. It's validation and limit setting. it seems like you're really angry, and see what they do with it. If they deny it and they say, I'm not, you say, all right, well, I know you for 7 years, been around you when you're angry. This feels like one of those times. Do you want me to tell you why it feels like one of those times? And what you're trying to engage is the self-awareness and the hope they will allow themselves to be vulnerable enough to say, oh, you know what? I am pissed. I don't like that you did that, or I don't like that you did that, or I don't like to do that. And then validate. I don't have a problem with you being angry. I understand why you're angry at me. If the shoe was reversed, I'd be angry at you right now. The problem is that we're not talking about it. The problem is that it's lingering on for days. The problem is we're arguing. Like, have you ever noticed this one? Everyone nods when I say this. It's the difference between a content argument and a process argument. A content argument is when you're arguing about what really is going on. That's a content argument versus a process argument where it has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on. And the other thing is, the longer an argument goes, the more things get pulled that are completely irrelevant to what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
In a process argument, it's like, all right, if I ask my wife, where would you like to go to dinner? And she says, I want to go here. And I start with, well, why does it always have to be what you want? And right? She just answered my question. That's a process argument. There's a problem in our interaction process versus, I don't want Italian tonight. I'd rather have Chinese. Well, I don't want Chinese. All right, can we come to a compromise? When people wind up in these process arguments, you have to be able to pull out your own projections, right? What am I contributing to this? Why am I annoyed? Well, I'm annoyed because I feel like you always decide what we're going to do. And she's probably simultaneously thinking, I'm tired of you always asking me. Why don't you make a decision for once? Well, I tried, and then you overrule me, right? And so the point being is that if we can normalize anger and even validate I understand why you're angry at me. I get it. That was kind of shitty. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but I understand I did. Can we try to resolve this, or how can we resolve it? Now, sometimes the resolution is, I'm angry and I just have to get over it. Then society expects that person to forgive me. But they're not ready to. They're still hurt. Forgiveness is a gift that you can give when you're ready to. And if you're not ready to, that's fine. Sometimes people need to metabolize it. Sometimes people need to heal a little bit. Sometimes people need to think about why I felt like that insult, the punch in the nose was a 4 and it felt like a 25. Why did it feel like a 25? And maybe it's because I just happened to do something that was very similar to what someone did in the past. And, it all synchronized and became, synergistic. Another thing is that if you apologize and you don't change the behavior, that's a gigantic screw you.
Useless.
Right. So I think that we do a lot of dances around anger and insults and relational drama. And then we superimpose societal expectations that just don't match how we're actually feeling.
What I like about what you're saying, back to the exchange between the two people, where the person who is experiencing the anger coming at them just names it. Says, this is what I see. And like you said, this is making a bid to that person's consciousness to go, oh, yeah, right. I'm going to snap out of it and feel that too. Because then there's more of you're in reality together. Being able to just name, this is what I see, validating it, saying, you can be angry, but can we talk about how you're treating me? Right? Or that sort of thing. Those two
don't have to be together, right? You could be angry and not treat me like shit.
Exactly. When I'm thinking about the people who I know who listen to this and the type of clients I typically have, like, to be able to give yourself permission to not cower from it, to not take it personally, to not say, I can't address this because it's only going to make it worse. My experience is when you, like you said, you do kind of try to say, hey, I see what you're experiencing. I can name it. I'm not telling you don't. I'm just saying, can you come down here with me?
Absolutely. And I think if we extend it even further, I don't like the analogy because it has to do with punching, but it's just a phrase. It's beating them to the punch. Meaning, there was a scene in the movie The Hunt for Red October where Sean Connery is a Russian admiral and he's trying to defect. And another Russian sub is trying to sink them. And then they shoot their torpedoes and he turns into the torpedoes. And everyone's like, Oh my God, what are you doing? You're going to kill us. And basically what he did was he shortened the distance so he got to the torpedo before it was armed. And he goes, all right, they're not going to make that mistake again. But sometimes you can shorten the distance and get to the explosion before the explosion happens and minimize it or even deflect it altogether. So it is perfectly, not only perfectly acceptable, I think it's admirable. If I had a bad day, I warn my family when I get home. Listen, I just want to let you know, I'm in a shitty mood. All of the reasons, how I talk to my wife about it versus how I talk to my kids, I'm just letting you know. I'm irritable. It is not your fault. I do not want to take it out on you. Just give me a little space to kind of decompress a little bit. Because not only do I not want to hurt them, I also want to teach them the importance of self-awareness. And do I get it right all the time? No, I don't get it right all the time. I mean, there are times that you work too many hours, you're a little bit tangry, right? You're angry because you're tired and your tolerance is lower. So we don't get it right all the time. And by the way, that's another thing. I mean, if you followed me around, Jay, you would go, this guy's an anger management expert? I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect, but I'm way better than I used to be. And I don't make the same mistakes often. I mean, I have my triggers and my weak points, as we all do. The take-home message is it's about evaluation and modification. It's about continuing to try to improve yourself, not holding yourself to an unrealistic standard and damning yourself, because on top of everything else, you just blew up the house, and now you also feel like shit about yourself because now you're a bad husband, bad dad, or whatever. Instead
and then
of
it's just this cycle that doesn't stop.
Absolutely. So I'm a big believer. This happened. I remember there was a situation where I blew up on my son, Logan. He's 15 now. I don't know. It was a couple of years ago, but it's happened here and there. And I'd realized afterwards that he, like I said, he needed a talking to, but he needed a 4, not a 15. And I'd say, you know what, buddy? I think I went too far on that. And now because he's no dummy, he's now figuring what's he going to negotiate out of me, right? Let's talk about reparations, right? So I said, listen, I just want to let you know, I know that I reacted to you stronger than that situation called for. And I'm sorry for that. And I'm going to work harder to try to not let that happen again. But for a couple of reasons. Number one, I wanted to own it and apologize legitimately. But I also wanted to model the humanness of it. Kid, you don't have to be perfect. Your dad's not perfect. You're not perfect. And when we can do that, we then start setting the stage for an emotionally intelligent household.
The thing that I was thinking as you were giving that example was, I think what you're presenting here is that we get to have connection when we feel shame. We get to have connection when we feel anger. We get to have connection when we feel discomfort. That discomfort itself doesn't disconnect unless we allow it to. And I think this is such a powerful message for this day and age and this time. We can be uncomfortable with someone else and not lose connection as long as we don't have the shame that makes it go all wacky.
I received a lot of requests for interviews right after Charlie Kirk's murder, and all kinds of accusations came my way. Oh, you're a white supremacist. He's a racist. I said, listen, my position is really very simple. I value discourse. I value our ability to talk with one another, to disagree. And even if we disagree, I don't have to want you dead. Okay? I think there's a big difference. I don't know how you could possibly have a relationship.
A huge difference.
Huge, right. And by the way, this is not about whether or not I am a card-carrying member. I'm Jewish. A lot of the things that Charlie Kirk was talking about don't agree with my belief system. So, I mean, shit, where the hell was it written that everyone has to agree with me or vice versa? But I think that we've gotten to a place that we're so uncomfortable with disagreement that we need to kill the disagreeer. Instead of respecting and valuing, I don't see it the same way as you do. We probably have different experiences and perspectives. Some of it has to do with the family we grew up with, the neighborhood we grew up with, lessons that we learned. But it's really about us being able to stay connected, even when we disagree. There's going to be a lot of people out there that say things that'll make your blood boil. But just because they say things that make your blood boil doesn't mean everything they say doesn't have any merit. And I've come to appreciate, similar to what we were talking about earlier, when a kid does something wrong, you want to correct their behavior, not assassinate their character. You're not a piece of crap. What you just did was not acceptable, right?
Yeah.
I can love you and not like what you did. I cannot like what you stand for and still appreciate when you have a really good point. And if I don't make myself available to listen to the good point because I think that this person is, this or that, then whose growth am I stunting? Mine. I can tolerate listening to, 98% of political propaganda that I don't agree with and go, well, that was an interesting point. I got to consider that. You can only do that if you could tolerate strong emotions.
Right. Yeah. So you said you have power if you're unprovocable. One of my mentors used to say, when there's no emotion you can't feel, you have freedom.
I spend a lot of time in this space with anger and trauma. I don't spend all my time in shame, but when you consider some of the things that people have done, I mean, consider sex offenders, philanderers, people who cheat on their spouses all the time. There are people that are engaging in cycles of behavior that you don't even want the words to come out of your mouth of what you've done, right? But the irony of it is if we don't talk about it, you're doomed to repeat it. Working in corrections, the theme is, look, I'm not a judge or a jury. I can't get you out of here. I can't excuse your behavior. But if I can explain it, then we're going to probably understand what contributed to it. And then we can target that with treatment and decrease the likelihood of this happening again in the future. And when you meet people there, most, but not all, well, it's also the issue of readiness. So, it's like the old joke, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to,
want to change.
Exactly. Yeah. And so timing matters a lot. But I think that if we're going to try to swim into deep waters, we have to be able to tolerate difficult emotions. And I hope that this book is just a small step in helping people master that.
I think it is. And I'm glad that it's out there. I'm happy that you came. So people can find the book, Dr. Mitch Abrams, I'm Not Fucking Angry. Where else can they find you?
At my website, drmitchabrams.com. I'm also on Twitter. I have quite a few opinions, as you would imagine. At Mitch Abrams ID. And the book is distributed widely, so it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the standard places that we just take for granted. We used to have to actually walk to a store and put down paper money and get a book, but nope, you could get it anywhere. And actually, the audiobook's going to be coming out probably at the end of November, which was a big deal for me because people that know me, I pride myself on being someone that people don't forget. They may not like me, they may not agree with me, but they'll remember me. And part of the reason is I'm unapologetically a kid from Brooklyn. I really am. I'm a kid from the streets who had some good fortune happen, made some lucky decisions in forks and roads, plenty of scars from the lessons that had been undeniably a city kid. And so when people heard that I was writing the book, they were like, "Are you going to have someone narrate the book?" And they were like, I was like, "No." And they were like, "No, we need to hear your voice." The only thing is that I have a greater appreciation for kindergarten teachers because I never realized how hard it is to read a book out loud as it was. But so that should be coming out at the end of November if everything goes according to plans. I think that one of the reasons why I'm an expert in anger is because I'm one of the few idiots that's talking about it all the time. Most people that are doing this, in fairness, and that's not to say there aren't a lot of great people doing anger management work, but most people that are writing books are writing it descriptively, not prescriptively. I want people to walk away feeling more empowered with what they can do better. And further, if there's things that you think that I missed, I'm always trying to learn. So I'd welcome any feedback that people have.
That you had the conversation with me where I feel like there were points where I was like, I don't know that I agree with that. Or how about this instead of this? So I appreciate you walking the talk and being able to see the whole perspective and
Well, as best I can, right? I mean, thank you, and you're welcome. I mean, it's. I think that's what a good conversation is. How are you going to treat people if the only lens you see is through your own, right? It's one of the things that comes up very often. DEI work and cultural diversity work. I've worked with a lot of minorities over the course of my life, but that doesn't mean that therefore I know what this person's life experience was. Right. One of the best books that I read in graduate school was Black Families in Therapy by Nancy Boyd Franklin. because she so grabbed the culture of the Black community, which it wasn't all encompassing, but she educated and said out loud the things that I saw growing up around me, with the importance of the church and the extended family, and you don't want to mess with mom and grandma, you really don't, right? And so, but the thing was that it broadened my horizons. But I'd be naive to think, therefore, every Black person, African American, Islander, wherever, that sits on my couch, I'm going to go, I know all about you.
I get you. Yeah.
Right. I have some ideas. Teach me about you. And I think that one of the things that I'm learning through this process when I get to speak to people like you is there are people that have different perspectives, different experiences. There are certain things that resonate with the things that I'm saying, and there are certain things that there's differences of opinion. I guess we're all hypocrites to various degrees. But if I say this is about empowerment, how do I do that and also shut down people that don't see it the same way as I do? Right? It's like no. And the thing is that what I find is most often the people that say something that it doesn't completely align, it's usually not a disagreement. It's a nuance. And the nuance is really, really important. It's like when I'm doing a forensic evaluation, the psych testing data is my skeleton. And then all of the other stuff is the flesh and bones. You can't tell what the animal's like just from the skeleton. You need the flesh and bones. That's nuance. And you get that from getting different people's perspectives.
Well said. Well, I'm going to ask you one final question before I let you go. This is the question I ask everybody who comes on. Do you have a practice or a ritual or something that you do that when you're around someone else, you don't lose yourself, you stay connected with you?
Yes, but I would lie if I'm saying I do that effectively all the time.
Oh,
what I do...
Who does?
Well, I mean, we can aspire, right? I've made a lot of mistakes over the course of my life. And I'm fortunate that I have an unbelievable wife and kids and people that are very, very close to me. And I intentionally try to live my life in a way that prevents me from hurting them. And I'm not talking about lessons that kids need to learn and it's going to be painful. It's like I try to be mindful of how I feel. Life hurts. It's how we grow, right? When you're training your muscles, you're actually tearing your muscles so that they'll heal better and stronger. So I'm not trying to blindly protect them. But I know the danger that I can cause. I mean, Jordan Peterson, with all of his controversial statements, I do agree with him when he says that men need to be dangerous, not violent. If you don't have the capacity to be dangerous, you're weak, you're limp. And if you're powerful, you have to wield that power responsibly. And so I try to keep good track of how I'm feeling. I'd like to say that I'm good at it. I'm constantly improving. And that's not to say I walk around on eggshells. I don't. I'm cautious, but I really have come to appreciate, probably because of the many losses that I've had in my life, the preciousness of time. Everyone wants to make a buck. You could always make more money. You can't get more time. You can't get more energy. It always reminds me of the Godfather where, the Godfather's talking to Michael. I just always thought that there would be more time. And I'm at a stage of my life where I'm really consciously aware.
Appreciating what you said, because, the question that I ask everybody, how do you stay with yourself when you're around other people, is directed at the sort of people who are typically my clients and in my community, which are people who lose themselves easily. They morph, they become pleasers, they fawn, that sort of thing. But what I hear in your answer is more to the experience that I hear you had in your life, which is, I don't think you lose yourself around other people in the sense that I would. I think what you're saying in your answer is you're tracking yourself not so you disappear. You're tracking yourself so that you don't cause pain.
I aspire to be more like your clientele, meaning that I want to lose myself a little bit. I don't want to be the most important person all the time. I want to be influential. I want to be a contributor to good things. I mean, I'm fortunate in that I have a wife that would not let me be a tyrant even if I wanted to be. But I also know that I couldn't be married to someone that I could push around. right?
Right.
So it works. I think in what I'm doing is I don't want to dominate people. I want to have my place and my authority, but I don't want to make myself the most important. And it's dangerous. It's a slippery slope because my wife warns me all the time about how I've spoiled our daughter, and she's right. My daughter at her sweet 16 had a pretty extravagant party, and my wife was not a fan of it. And I said, listen, I hope to see great grandchildren someday, but tomorrow's not promised for any of us. And this night, everybody is going to hear how much I adore her. By the time I eventually go into the ground, the people that I care about will have no confusion about how I feel about them. And that's what drives a lot of things that I do. I don't get it right all the time. And I hope that I'm a role model for people with the imperfection, that I know I don't get it right all the time, but I'm constantly trying to improve. And really what it all boils down to is relationships.
Bingo. Yep. And that's where you and I have the same core at the center of our heart, which is this is about looking back on your life saying, I lived and related well to myself and everyone that I could. And I fucked it up because I was a human, but I tried my hardest. There we go.
It's not because of a lack of effort. You know, they say that the road to hell is paved in good intentions. Intentions matter. You could have good intentions and have bad outcomes. And ironically enough, you could have bad intentions and good outcomes. So, you know, I think that I think I've said this every day for the last, well, at least every working day for the last 2 to 3 months. Man plans and God laughs. It's like, you know, as soon as you think
never has it seemed more true.
Yeah, as soon as you think you have it all figured out, hold my beer. There's something you didn't consider.
I feel like that's the good place to end right there. That was some you're dropping some wisdom. Thank you, Dr. Mitch. I appreciate you and everything you shared today.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you. It's I hope that the things that we discussed resonate with a lot of people. And I think if I might just close with the, I guess, retroactive apology for the cursing, we really have to do the best we can to be honest with ourselves and how we feel. And sometimes that includes profanity. And I hope that people have a little bit more permission to be honest with themselves, to do the best they can to get what they want out of life. And when someone tells you you can't, you tell them, fuck you, watch me.
Thank you so much, listener, for being here today. I hope something in today's episode resonated with you and helps you to have a better experience of yourself in your life and your relationships, because you really do deserve that. And if someone came to mind while you were listening today, would you take a moment and share this episode with them right now? And if you have an extra minute and you haven't yet, could you please leave a review for Hey Wait? Because both of those things help new people find the show. And it means a lot to me to be able to reach and connect with new people around this work. And with that, if you have an idea for someone you want me to interview, or a topic you want me to cover, or a question you have, feel free to reach out to me at Hey Wait with Jay on Instagram. Hey Wait is produced by Scuff Studio, and the original music is by Dalton Grant. And hey wait, before we go, I want to remind you, as always, that your insides matter and the right people will meet you there. So stay with yourself, and I'll see you next time.